Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the finale, in a sense, of our 11 days of guests for the 12 days of Christmas. I can't believe we've made it here, and it has been a really wild, fun, and educational ride. And I thank everybody for being along with me for this entire time. And like literally, so many of you have been with me every night, and it's amazing. And I feel it, and I'm so appreciative. And I know that you guys have been enjoying it. And also a big thank you, of course, to all of our guests as well. Now, of course, we still have one more guest, and I'm so excited to kind of bring this home. Somebody who's from my home area as well. So I'm excited to have Sue with us for our last. But I do want to remind everybody there are still 12 days of Christmas. So tomorrow being the 12th day, we reserve that for our wrap up party. So definitely bring your work in progress, definitely bring a little snack, bring a cocktail, water, whatever it is you want to enjoy. And make sure you brush up on each of the guests, because remember, for the wrap up party, I will be crafting a trivia question pertaining to each of our guests and our conversations with those guests.
Oh, that's fun.
And then whoever's got those fastest fingers, or whoever happens to know the answer and gets it into the chat first, will be getting a prize. Now, I feel like some of the prizes I've kind of already curated. Some of them maybe I don't know. Again, nothing earth shattering, just a little something to say thanks for playing along. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I also am going to have some people in house. I think we've got about 8 or 9 people that are going to be joining me here as well. So I'll be coming to you from a different location. There'll be lots of chit chatter in the background. So it's really just going to be a free for all. And I really hope that you will join us and have a lot of fun along with us, even if you can't be here with us. Now, of course, still this evening, we still have one more winner that is going to be awarded a $20 store credit with us here at Life. So remember, in order to be part of that, you've got to hang in until the end of our program. And as we feel like it's wrapping up, then I will certainly let Sue know how many people we still have with us, and she'll pick that lucky number and we'll find out who it is. Now, for tomorrow night, for the wrap up party, I almost did forget. We, of course, will be drawing the ticket for the coveted keepsake basket, as I keep referring to it, because it really is a keepsake of a little bit of something from each of our guests over the course of this 12 days of Christmas. And you don't have to be in it to win it as far as being present, but you do have to be on this list, of course, meaning you took an opportunity to shop with us and maybe snag something along the way, because we've had lots of exciting things drop during the 12 days of Christmas, as well as, of course, some specials that we extended to you as well. So without further ado, I don't know if I want to do my introduction or if I want to let Sue do her own introduction, but again, I feel like, as I always have to say, even though I know Sue, I don't know Sue. And that's what's really great about this for me, as well as for all of you. Now, again, as I was looking to have this collection of guests that we could be in conversation with for the 12 days of Christmas, some of what I also look at is kind of who have I worked with, over the past year or in the past, who has something related to the fiber industry, and also a connection to not only the love of fiber, but the animals as well that provide us with all these beautiful fibers. Now, I've had the pleasure, of course, to know Sue over, kind of loosely, the past, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, 10. Okay, 10. And really, for me, I think it's just always that love of when we are vendors, as I've talked about with Julia and also with Laura last night. When we're all at a fiber event together, you can't help but hopefully find just a little bit of time in which you can walk around and, have an appreciation for the other makers that are there, and what they have to bring to the table. But for me, there's always a few people that really stand out, work that I'm really drawn to. That doesn't mean I don't admire all of the work that's there, but I think that it's okay to say that there's certain things that you're drawn to, and maybe certain things that you aren't drawn to. Now, it also might have a little something to do with that. For a while, Sue, you guys were kind of like right next to me. And so I always had a really good bird's eye view
Yeah.
of the super cool yarn, that you would create. So in a way, we've already had conversations with Heidi earlier, who does do her own spinning, also does a little bit of dyeing. Not all of her yarns necessarily are dyed. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this conversation is different while there are many similarities as well. And getting a chance to also appreciate the different styles in which people can have an opportunity to express themselves with the art of hand spinning. So that's what our conversation is going to be about tonight, as well as so many other things, I'm sure. And again, as I've had the pleasure also to host Sue to come to my farm because she does live here on Long Island. Now, as far as I'm concerned, she lives on the other side of the earth. You are in Long Beach?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds like it's part of Long Island, of course, which it is. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, that is up island and South Shore.
Yeah.
So for me, I live on the eastern end of Long Island. I mean, technically, I'm centrally located, but for anybody that is west of me, meaning close to the city, I call it, we say you're up island.
Up
Um,
Island.
Now, I feel like you're not up island city like because you're kind of like
No,
up island and, like I said, South Shore. So isn't it almost a little more beach like?
it's completely 100% beach. It's a barrier island, like Jones Beach, like Fire Island. Barrier Island, you can only get here by a bridge or a boat. So you're kind of stuck if there's a problem. And we're the spot that takes the brunt of the hurricanes. So all the other little towns on the other side of the bridge are fine because we've taken it all. So I live about 2 blocks from the ocean and about 4 blocks from the bay. So surrounded. And that's how I got the name Sandpiper Yarns, because I grew up here. I spent all of my time at the beach. And
So you
that's
grew up in Long Beach.
yes, with Allie.
And I never thought about, and of course that would have been one of the questions that I would ask you is, where did the name come from? So for
Yeah.
people who are not familiar with the beach environment, why don't you talk about what Sandpiper Yarns then refers to? What's a sandpiper?
Yeah, so the sandpiper, it's really called a piping plover. That's the other name. And they travel in groups of hundreds and hundreds, and they're tiny, tiny, and they run really, really, really fast. And they go like this, really, really fast. And they oftentimes have something in their mouth. And then they freeze. And it looks like they only have one leg because they put one up. And then they bring down their leg and they just go back and forth in formation. And if you live at the beach, you will see sandpipers all the time. And they are protected. There's areas you can't go into because the nesting area is here. So it's just, it's where I am. It's where I live. It's where I do everything. And that's where the name came from.
Do you know? Now they're only beach type birds.
I don't know. I think you'll find them anywhere where there's water, but I think we kind of feel like we own them kind of in the ocean, like they're salt water, but I'm not sure if they're freshwater at all. They're tiny. They're only like
Yeah.
this big,
And
and
that's
they
the
have
thing
long
too.
beaks.
I feel like I only know them as well because of being out here. So where I'm located, we're not quite as close as you are to
Right.
the beach, but I'm super close to Smith Point. So
Hmm.
we go, and that's where I grew up. So actually, I did grow up in the same way, about 2 blocks from the bridge to go over to Smith Point, and then the bay was just on the other end of my street. And
Right.
so similar in a way. And so that's all I know piping plovers to be about as
Right.
well. But I guess I don't know if they're on other beaches or if it's just a Long Island bird. Do you know?
I don't. I did. I knew a lot of things. It's all gone. It's all gone. I don't
This, of
remember.
course, is just my own natural curiosity, and I'm sure somebody could be Googling it and
Somebody's going to be telling us. I
dropping
actually
it
I
in
have
the.
books on it. Oh, they're migratory. Okay.
Here we go.
Um, I should know this. The
You
name,
know
it's
what's interesting is, like you said, because they are protected, if they are nesting, they'll actually barricade areas off of the
mhm,
beach
yeah,
so that
yeah,
you do not disturb them. And it
yeah.
does not matter what that might impact.
Yeah.
they come first.
Yeah. And the name itself, I mean, when I started this whole thing, I backed my way into pretty much everything. And a friend of mine, Joy, who used to share the booth with me, her daughter said, "Why don't you do a fair?" Well, if we do a fair, I need a name. I need a card. I needed this. And I was running through with another friend on the phone, driftwood, shells. I mean, I was running through all the names, and then we landed on Sandpiper. It wasn't like it, it wasn't this magical kind of experience. It was just me trying to, in like 5 minutes, to come up with a name. And when that one hit, it's like, this is it. This is just perfect.
And you know,
So
it's interesting that you say that. When I'm feeding the animals, as I was this evening, I have a business podcast that I listen to. And just this evening, the conversation, as it always is, about varied things, but the conversation about the name of a business. And it was interesting, just like you said, in a way, the laboring over what the business name is really isn't significant. And what they were saying is, like, if you think about it, Google's a terrible word. You know, McDonald's, he said, sounds like, you know, an
yeah,
Irish pub, you know, but
yeah,
it's branding, right? So what maybe seems clunky in the beginning, it's all about the picture and the story behind it, what it means to you. And then eventually people will fall in line as just knowing you as
right.
Sandpiper.
Yeah.
So
So it was really just a spur of the moment. This is where I live, beach,
I think it's
pipers.
perfect. Although it makes more sense to me now that I have that whole story, because I really honestly never put it together. And that would have been one of the questions I would have asked you, is where did
Right.
that come from? So, and
Yep.
again, as stupid as it is, the fact that we both live on Long Island, I don't really go to Long Beach. So I don't really have the image, you know, of Long Beach, you know, in my head. But I guess that would be no different than like people that live in a state that's quite large. It's just, I think that people really don't realize just how long Long Island is.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
you are essentially on the other end of the earth from me, as far as I'm
It's
concerned.
about an hour,
Yeah.
but Long Beach itself is 11 miles long, but only a half a mile wide. It's tiny and skinny.
Is it unusual for people? So, for instance, a friend of mine just moved recently to Captree Island,
Mhm.
and there are people that have summer homes there, but there are fewer people that live there year round. So, is it unusual that you grew up there and lived there year round? Is it more of a vacation spot for people?
It used to be more of a vacation spot, and it just got built up and built up and built up to it's full time now for most people. It's overwhelmingly dense now. But it's a destination. There's a boardwalk and there's surfing, and
Nice.
that's it. It's like if there's surfing, people come. Yeah.
Well,
And the boardwalk.
all of my natural curiosity, which of course has not necessarily anything to do with what we're talking about. But again, this is what it's about. I just kind of go with, you know, what I'm curious about, what I want to know. And so let's backtrack
Hmm.
to wherever you think is relevant to let us know how you got involved in the fiber industry. Whether it's, did you grow up with this? Was it in your family? Did you go to school for anything related to this? Because this is,
Right.
again, the part that I have no idea how you arrived
Right.
here.
Well, I would say I grew up with it completely. Legend has it that I learned to knit when I was 3. My mother told me I learned to knit when I was 3. She taught me how to knit, and I have absolutely no recollection of knitting or learning to knit or asking questions or not knowing how to pretty much make anything. Um, so I learned very young. I have my knitting needles from when I was a little girl. These are Red Heart brand knitting needles, little red hearts on them. They're metal with celluloid on. I mean, these are antiques. I'm an antique. Um, and I think she probably, I remember her telling me that she enticed me with the hearts. She's like, "Don't you want to play with these little hearts?" Yes, I do. So I started to knit. I knit like a crazy person my whole life. By the time I was 10, I was making fisherman knits, all kinds of cables, Icelandic sweaters with yokes of the whole family. I just was a knitting crazy person. And my dad was in the interior design business, so the house was full of a lot of textiles. I was exposed to a tremendous amount of art, and textile growing up. I loved making things. All I wanted to do was make things. I would have loved to have gone to school to make things, but I would have been the first person in the family to go to college and complete college. And that's the route they wanted me to go on. And all the other stuff, they don't, that's cute, that's great, but that's not, that's not important enough. It's not serious enough. So I saw my craft or my hobby as just that. It's a hobby. I love it, but it's not anything you do for a job or full time. And even in my dad's business, which was phenomenal and fascinating, he dissuaded me because he said the customers are so awful, so he's like, no, don't do it. Both my parents had their own businesses, and they both said, don't ever, ever, ever do it. It's terrible. It's 24/7. You don't have any time to yourself, blah, blah, blah. So somehow I went from 3 to 53 without knowing about spinning.
Well, wait,
Literally.
and not that you have to, did you go to school?
Yes, went to school, studied
Or
literature like a good girl in
wait, you
Washington,
studied
D.C.
what? Literature?
Literature. But I also took ceramic classes, and that I had a blast. I loved it. So I did ceramics for many, many years because I'm only happy when I'm working with my hands,
Now,
not
what
so
did
much
you
my
do
head.
post-college with your literature degree? What was your career?
Oh,
If
I
you
did, I did editing. I worked for a law firm, and then later on, after I had my kids, I became a master gardener with Cornell Cooperative Extension, which was amazing because gardening was also a huge passion. So I did a lot of garden design and horticulture for many years until financially the bottom dropped out of that because it's kind of a luxury industry. People always have their lawns cut, but they don't necessarily have their whole garden redone. So I worked for country clubs. I designed for country clubs for a long time. And that was a lot of fun. And then I moved on to special education. And I worked in a middle school for almost 20 years as an assistant for the special ed kids. And I really liked that. And it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't my passion. And then, like I say 50, from 3 to 53, I had no idea spinning existed. I never met anyone that spun. I've never seen anybody spin.
really, in
I
all your years of knitting
never,
like a crazy
never.
girl, and did you, and this is, I'm curious, did you continue? Like a lot of times people that knit when they're younger, there's certain points in time where maybe you have to put it down, life, school. Did you continue to knit all through school? Did you put it down at any
I
point in
always
time?
knit. Yeah, I knit for boyfriends, and of course that broke up the relationship. As soon as you knit for a boyfriend, that's over. I knit through college. I was always knitting. I knit for my kids. They never wore the sweaters because the fleece was born. I still have those sweaters. They're perfect. I knit for my husband. I knit for family members. I made Icelandic sweaters for my niece, my nephew, my sister, everybody, because I just needed to do this. It's very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. It's very meditative. All the things that they say about it now that everyone knows, I knew that. I just didn't have the vocabulary to express that. Nobody was really talking about it in those days. This is going back 30, 40 years. So yeah, I always did it. But, of course, there weren't that many choices in terms of fiber either. It was very limited. I used to use a lot of Lopi because I love that. It's great stuff. Now I spin Lopi, which is crazy. So yeah, I always did it. It was like, and they made fun of me. Everyone made fun of me, like in my family. Oh, she's a little old lady sitting there. Even my friends,
But your mom knew how to knit, so she's the one that taught you how to knit.
expert knitter,
Okay.
expert knitter.
So
And she
even
was the
though they
one.
saw her as a knitter, they were still making fun of you as a
Oh
knitter?
yeah, totally. Because I was a teenager knitting. And I have a very good friend, Stacy, who may or may not be watching. We used to sit on a Friday night in front of a movie knitting, you know. That's what we did when we were 50. We had to. We couldn't not do it. And if it wasn't that, we were doing macrame. And if it wasn't macrame, we were making our own clothes. And if we weren't doing, it was just a compulsion to create. Always. Always.
So the aha moment of where
Moment.
spinning became a rep. Wait. So let's just say all this time, were you always using commercial yarn? Like, so
Oh,
meaning
yeah.
you never came across a hand spun yarn, or there was never a thought to you, or
No.
as introspective as I know you are, and as soulful as I know you are, there was never a thought of like connecting the animals with people making their own clothes back in the day.
No, no thought. No thought. And also, well, it was a different world. It was a different world. And people were focused on maybe different things. When we were growing up here, there were two stores. And there was the Mean Lady store. So when we went into the Mean Lady store, she would yell at us if we didn't buy anything within the first 5 minutes. And then the other woman, well, my mother used to take me in there when I was very little, and it was a mess of a store, horrible mess, long, skinny, dark, nothing special. It looked like the back room of a store. It didn't look, it wasn't set up. And my mother used to sit me on the counter and I would knit. And the woman's name was Toby, and she was a doll to me. Fast forward 35 years, I'm in my house. We're having a tour here because my house is on the historical register. It's a very old house. So we had a tour, and in walks Toby. I hadn't seen her in 35 years. I think she was close to 90 at the time. And when I saw her, I literally burst into tears because she was a person that welcomed me into the fold right from the get-go. She's like, here, sit here are your needles, here's your yarn, you're one of us. And I knew even at a very young age that the community existed. And then she left, she retired. And then all we had was the Mean Lady, and she was mean. And she didn't see us as customers. She just thought us, I don't know what she thought. She didn't want us touching anything. And after that, this is Long Island. There's not a lot of, you have to really dig deep to find the creatives, and they're here, but they're not as obvious. And maybe like in Huntington, like I say, Long Beach is very much a surfer town. And the arts were kind of put to the back a little bit. So yeah, I didn't experience any of that. And I kick myself. I'm like, where was I? What was I? How did I miss this? How did I miss this? Because I really missed out for myself. It would have been amazing. But, like you've said to some of the other people all week, sometimes things just happen when they're supposed to happen. And
Exactly.
I have to go along with that.
Exactly.
What choice do I have?
And had you been exposed to it earlier on, maybe you wouldn't have had an appreciation for it. You wouldn't have had time for it.
Right.
Everything is always the way it is supposed to be.
Probably if I had been exposed to it maybe 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier, when my kids were growing up, I don't think I would have ever cooked a meal again, gone to the supermarket again, cleaned the house again. I would have just dropped everything. Because that's what happened when I discovered spinning. It was like, oh, this is my thing. And I found, it's like, it's like utopia. You found your place, the pot of gold, and this is where I need to live and be. And that's kind of the way it happened. And luckily I was in a position in life where I didn't have as many responsibilities. So that was kind of good.
So where did this aha moment occur? Tell us.
In Long Beach.
Same place that you just said, no arts.
Exactly. We have these craft fairs every couple of times over the summer on the boardwalk. And there's some really good vendors. And then there's some, not handmade stuff you would not appreciate. And a friend of mine, a neighbor, she literally shamed me into going. She's like, come on, don't be such a snob. We're going. So we get up on the boardwalk, we're walking. And I see a woman has a booth of knitted items, and sitting towards the back, she's spinning on a spinning wheel. And I was like, what is that? What is she doing? And I went over to her. I introduced myself. I said, I have to learn how to do this. She said, I will teach you. And of course, long story short, she's become a close friend. She did teach me. She so generously gave of herself to me, a total stranger.
Is this
Total
anybody
stranger.
that is involved in the industry that we would
No,
know?
no. She makes, well, one of the things she's done in her life is she makes handmade books. She's a book binder.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so she learned that up in Boston somewhere. And she spins. And now you would love this. She has a house up in Massachusetts, and she is now the president of the board of directors for the Berkshire Humane Society. So we have an animal connection too that is very strong. Like, we look after each other's pets and all. But basically, she's like, come over one day and I'll show you the wheel, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I couldn't wait. Went over, I tried it. It was like, when you first
Do you
try it.
remember
She
what
said,
kind of a wheel it was?
yes, it was an Ashford traditional.
Okay.
And she said, you really can't learn doing it like once a week. Take the wheel home.
Oh.
Take the wheel home and practice. And she just sent me home with the wheel. She sent me home with fiber. She said, don't worry about it. She said, just keep doing it and you will get it. And because of the personality that I am, within 2 weeks, oh yeah, I got it. And I was spinning like a lunatic. And then she offered to sell me the wheel because she figured she'd get another one. So I bought her wheel. And that was it. And then she said to me, like 6 months later, she said, you really have to start dying. Like, dying. So and every time I see her, which is not as often as I would like, I say, you changed my life. And she doesn't want to hear it. She's like, oh, stop. No, you changed my life because of the incredible generosity of spirit that I'm going to give you all my knowledge. I'm going to help you and do whatever I can to help you. Run with it. And that's what it was like. And that was about 11 years ago. So here we are.
It's making me, of course, I don't want it to be about me, but when you think about those situations and the people that are brought into your life that introduce you to something that does so profoundly change your life, it's amazing. And so and only because mine as well is related to the llamas, but also the spinning. Lars and Gail Garrison that I got connected with that introduced me to the llamas. Gail is the one that introduced me to spinning, and it's that same thought process. So I just feel I'm reliving my own thoughts in that very much similar personality as well, because once I sat at that wheel, I did not move for 3 days. We were at a conference and I sat there for 3 days because, damn it, I was going to learn how to
Right.
spin. And that's
Right.
how I am also.
Yeah.
We kind of go head first, and it's a matter of not conquering it, but not giving up and
Mhm.
being persistent, but being curious. So it's a healthy it's a healthy obsession, shall we say.
Right. Yes.
But
That's what I like to say.
but it's that. So yeah, so thank you, I guess, really is what I want to say. Thank you for sharing your story in that sense, because then it also makes me smile inside thinking about my own story and my own journey and the people that forever, oh, I'm gonna get choked up.
Forever. You don't realize when someone asks you a question, what your answer will mean to them. If you just give them a little time. And, a perfect stranger. Well, you were a perfect stranger too. And the first time I saw you was you were shearing at Halleckville. And I was just a guest watching you. And the next year I was a vendor. I remember abandoning my booth to run after the llama. And then after a while, Joy, my booth mate, said, "You got to come back." Like, but I'm with the llamas. So
It,
yeah.
I was going to say, it is interesting because you do have such an affinity for the animals.
Oh,
And it's funny when you were saying earlier, had you found spinning earlier, my first initial thought was, had you found spinning earlier, I wonder, would you not have picked up
oh
and
yeah,
moved your family and
absolutely.
relocated somewhere where you could have had your own animals? And not
Absolutely.
that you can go back and say, woulda, shoulda, coulda, of
Hmm.
course, but
Hmm.
it almost is surprising to me because
Yes.
you love them so much and you are so connected,
Yep.
to the animals as well. It's almost surprising to me that you
Yeah.
have not carved
Yeah.
that.
It's in some ways, it's like in some ways living in Long Beach is kind of like you're at the end of the earth. You don't go over the bridge if you don't have to, because it's the other, it's Long Island over there. So and yet we were big Vermont people. We spent every winter in Vermont. We're skiers. I love it up there. I always wanted to relocate, but my husband works in the city and that was the end of that. So it didn't happen, but that's where my heart is, that's where my soul is with the animals for sure. And I also love wool. I've always loved wool. I wore wool my whole life. So I never had that fear or discomfort with wool that so many people seem to have developed. I don't know. So yeah, it was a life-changing experience. And whether I was with my own human children or, well, they were all human, but my children or the children that I used to teach, I would say to them, you never ever know when you're going to meet the person that's going to change your life. And it could be any decade, don't necessarily expect it now. It could be at any time in your life. And it keeps happening. That's the cool thing. So when I started all this in my 50s, now I'm in my mid 60s and it's still happening. I'm still meeting amazing people. I'm still exploring. I'm still learning. It's such a gift. And I just can't believe it. It's amazing.
So talk to me about the style that you feel like you've developed over time. Now,
Yeah,
again, I only know what I know, which is the picture right behind you.
right.
And it's
Yep.
funny because, and somebody who really knows. I mean, unfortunately, spin cycle yarns is the only thing that's coming to my mind. And somebody can crucify me for that not being the right thought process. But that really cool, like striated. I mean, you've been doing this as long as I've known you. I'm sure you didn't start out that way. So, again, huge open-ended questions. How has your style changed? What did you do in the beginning? Where are you resourcing your fibers from? Because I don't even know that either.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm sure I'll interject with more questions
Yeah.
as you start to talk, but let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I would say that up until the time I started spinning and dyeing, I was a naturals girl. I
Okay.
loved naturals. I loved Lopi. I love naturals. I love like this sort of thing. This is what I would buy. This is what I would want to knit with. These were my colors. And they still are. I love them. That's what I love. But when I started to dye, in my, I discovered color for the first time in my life, really. I discovered how much I really love it. And I really knew nothing about color theory. Zero. I mean, even though I grew up with in my parents' living room, there had to be 27 different fabrics going on at the same time because of the business and textiles, and everything was layered on top of, layers on top of, and that made sense to me. Whereas two colors, I could not figure out. So in the beginning, when I started dyeing, I would have to call Joy, my felting oldest friend who used to share the booth with me, and she was an art teacher. And I would say, okay, I'm mixing blue and yellow to make green. How do I make it not like Christmas tree green, but sagey green? And she would say, put in a dot of red. Really? You put in a dot of red? I knew nothing. I knew nothing. So I'm basically in my basement going like this, going like this, going like this, and just learning about colors. And then once I started putting the colors on the fiber, I couldn't stop. I just couldn't. The biggest problem I have is restraint, pulling back and saying, I'm going to make something with less colors in it. Because I would say most of my skeins have between 10 and 18 colors in them.
I'm
It's a
getting
lot.
like flashbacks from Project Runway, when the maker would be criticized and they would say, you need
Yeah,
to edit this.
exactly. I don't know how to edit. You should see my house. Yeah, editing is not something and I'm trying. I'm really trying because I want to learn that too. I want to learn and grow and evolve. But when I'm in the moment of doing it, I get so carried away with the colors and then I start playing with them and mixing them. And I just go somewhere. I'm somewhere else. I'm really not there. I'm just somewhere else, like a little kid playing.
Now, I'm sure
So
somebody's going to ask, so talk about the dyes that you use.
I started off mostly using greener shades, organic dyes, and mixing my own colors. And with 5 colors, you can really pretty much make everything. If you have someone that can help you and say, put a little dot of red in it or put a little dot of this in it. And it's just trial and error, really. So I would say for the first 7 years, that's what I was doing. And then I started using some of the Dharma dyes because on some fibers, every fiber is so different. Every flock is, even the sheep from some flock are different. It's like siblings in a family, their hair is different. So you could put a color on this one, and they come out totally different. So when you're dyeing certain fibers, it just disappears. Like, where's your color? So it's harder and harder to get the bold. I like the bold colors. And well, I also like to knit thick because I can't deal with a number 4 needle. No. So and well, people ask me all the time, why do you only do pretty much bulky? And what I explain is when you dye roving and then you spin it, the thinner you spin it, the more dissipated the color gets. You just lose, it's gone. So if you're spinning thick, you get the bold colors. And then the really fun part is when you spin 2 bobbins and then ply them together, and these colors upon color upon color. And it's just fun. For me, it's fun. I would be bored spinning long strands of the same color. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So that's really it's not like a design choice necessarily. It's more like it's just for me.
Well, it's just like anything else. I mean, you're following your passion,
Hmm.
you're doing what you're called to do, and that comes through in the end because as any true maker, if you're making something as we've talked about before, to follow a trend or to hit a mark on something or to do what somebody else wants you to do, one, the joy is not going to be there. So it's
Right.
not going to be self sustaining because you're not going to
Hmm.
want to continue with it because your
Right.
heart's not in it, your passion isn't in it. And like we've
Exactly.
said time and time again, none of us are going to be millionaires as a result of doing this. So we might as well enjoy what we're doing. And that in turn, is just creating hopefully a happy, fulfilled life and work that truly emanates the joy that goes into it.
Totally. I mean, it's mental health. If you're mentally healthy, how much money, the money won't make much of a difference as long as your basics are taken care of. If you're excited about getting up in the morning, like sometimes I'm too excited the night before about what I'm going to do in the morning, and I can't fall asleep because I want to get to it. I want to get to it.
Yeah, well, thank you, the 12 days of Christmas. I can't go to sleep at night because by the time I get off of these programs for 2 hours, genuinely the level of excitement and as amped up as I get, it takes me a while to wind down. So
Yeah,
my whole sleep schedule is
yeah.
all sorts of screwed up because I can't shut my brain off
Mhm.
at night from all this inspiration. So truly, I
Yes.
understand what you mean.
Yes. I did listen to most of the week. And I came away every night thinking, I could spend time with this person. I have things I could talk about with this person. I have like when Lisa was talking about the flute, and I'm thinking, well, my husband and I met in the high school band. I mean, we we're so multi-layered and have, similar interests. That's the connection that's just gold. It's
Well,
gold.
and that's why I said that's what all of this is about. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's like the get to know you, the story, the person, and then yes, we'll get into the technical stuff too. But like,
Right.
right, how many people have been English majors, you or literature? I mean,
Yeah.
so it is really fun to see the similarities and then also just genuinely the appreciation for what everybody does, no matter how different. And again, just this whole community and this whole circle that we're part of. Now, I have so many questions about how you create those colors behind you. However, I'm even more curious because we've never really talked about it short of what you did for me as where you resource
Mm.
your fibers from.
A lot of it is upstate in Vermont. Um, let's see,
Are
Ensignbrook.
you gifted fleeces? Are you buying fleeces?
Oh, I'm not doing anything with a fleece. I'm not a cleaner. I don't clean anything. I
Oh,
want it cleaned. I want it cleaned already. Yeah, when would I have the time? I do everything by hand. When I would need a 48-hour day. As it is, I don't have enough hours in my day. So no, I don't buy fleeces. I
okay.
buy cleaned roving
Okay.
and start with that because
And so just in case, why
Mhm,
don't you explain for somebody and I mean right there already, I started out this conversation saying, even though yourself and Heidi, have similar paths in what you're doing, your look is different, but right there as also another separation of how the process is different. So just in case maybe somebody doesn't understand, explain what roving is versus working with a raw fleece.
so the roving is after the fleece is sheared off, after Tabitha shears it off, and it's a big lump of very dirty, poopy mess. It gets skirted and cleaned, and all of that stuff gets picked out of it and cleaned out of it, and then it gets run through. What's that contraption that it gets run through?
Harder. A
That
drum
the drum
carder.
carder, which I've looked at them, but I'm not there yet. I don't think I'll be able to do that. I would need to be 10 years or 20 years younger for that. Yeah. And that creates the roving, which is like a big fluffy cloud of cotton ball, all puffy and clean and
Now wait.
soft.
So are
What?
you spinning from roving? Because what I was going to say to add to that, just for a little clarification of people. So after it's washed, it's carded or it's basically combed so
Hmm.
that the fibers are now parallel to one another,
Hmm.
traveling in the same direction for ease of spinning, or you could certainly felt from it. However, there's different forms of roving. Now there is, I don't see it as much, but when you described it as a big fluffy cloud, there actually used to be a form, it was called a cloud versus a roving. So you could spin from a cloud or you
Hmm.
could spin from a roving, but you're working from roving the strips, correct?
It depends. It depends where I get it. It
Okay.
depends. Because if I come across something I really want, I'll take it in any form it comes pretty much. It could be a bat, it could be a
Okay.
cloud, it could be the long strips of roving. Um, I've done all kind. I mean, I've spun raw yak and raw camel and lots of raw things.
Right,
But I
because this,
can't. I can't.
go ahead.
Wait,
Yeah.
you broke up there for a second. But if it's not clean enough, people aren't going to want to buy it. I'm okay with it, a little dirty, but it really has
Well,
to
the
be.
significance of what you were saying in terms of buying or working with camel or yak raw to work with sheep raw, you have that lanolin component.
Yes,
So
right, right.
unless you want to spin in the grease, you really have to have that washed prior
Yep,
to.
yep.
Essentially, I would imagine working with something like camel or yak, you're washing it after the fact. That could also help to get the debris out then, no?
Mhm. It's kind of stuck in there. Sometimes it flies out when you're
Yeah.
flying. when you're going the other way, sometimes it flies out and then it's all over your house. But yeah, so I'll source, 8 Hands Farm. I would get Icelandic or Shetland. Blue-faced Leicester, I'll get from Irish Creek Farm upstate. I use a lot of merino superwash that I've been getting from a company called Scholler in Germany, because they came up with a new way to make the superwash using electricity that is more sustainable, and it's just really expensive. And I bought a ton of it before COVID, and I haven't been able to get in touch with them since COVID. So I don't know if they're even still in business, but I bought a tremendous amount and I still have it. But it's the wave of the future, I would think, that they're going to start using this other method to create the superwash.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, from a business perspective, most of the roving are you getting in volume so that you get it at more of a wholesale cost since you are involved in retail?
Yes. A huge. Like, where do you put it? I don't have a farm. It's in every room of my house. It's in every closet of my house. It's in it's in the dining room when you expect to open it up and find the dishes. No, it's in there too. Yeah.
I feel you. I have the same thing. I just have fleeces everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, a funny story, not so funny because I'm like, that's a terrible analogy. The other night I was cleaning out a drawer, and for whatever reason, we literally had like 6 or 7 clam knives. So I put them on the counter and, said to Christopher, well, why don't you look through these and figure out which ones you need, which ones you don't need. His response was, oh, what, like all the fiber all around the house? What about what ones you need and what ones you don't need? I'm like, that's not the same thing at all. I'm like, I
It's
need
not
them
the
all.
same thing. It's not the same thing. I mean, I also have a stash, like a normal person's stash of other people's yarn. I have a lot of wool.
Now,
Yeah.
do you only work? I mean, I know you just mentioned the yak and the camel, but overall, the yarns that you're creating, the things we see behind you, what you're working with, is it predominantly wool or is it all wool?
As opposed to,
Well, just
like alpaca.
alpaca, llama, so are
Oh,
you?
I use a lot for my naturals. I'm always using alpaca, Wensleydale, llama, whatever natural I can get, really, which is the hard part. It's harder to find. There aren't as many. But yeah, and when I want to put something in for a little shine, I will use tencel
Mhm.
for a little, because the silk is just, it makes everything too expensive, and it's also not as sustainable as the pulp.
Mhm.
So I'll use that. And I also use a lot of blue-faced Leicester when I make singles, because you can see the shine, which is great. And I also use this for weaving, which I just started doing a few years ago.
I know earlier Ali had put in the chat to talk about how you got into the rabbit hole of weaving, but let's hang on to that.
Okay.
So explain to somebody the difference between, for instance, you just picked up that skein of orange, beautiful orange, and you called it a single versus like what's behind you,
Yep.
which would be a 2-ply. So
2 plies.
maybe just explain the difference because, that's not something that we've talked about before, the difference of a single ply versus 2-ply.
Okay, so 2-ply, depending on your fiber, you like for something like merino, you really or alpaca, you really have to have a 2-ply. Otherwise, it's just gonna, it has no
Gonna
body
shed
to
more
it.
than an animal would
Yeah,
shed.
exactly. So this is merino superwash. So you spin 2 bobbins and then you ply them together. And that's how you get a lot of color variation too. And it gives it a lot of strength also. And then for the single, I mean, if I were to ply the blue-faced Leicester, it loses the iridescence. You don't see it anymore. So I love the single. A lot of people don't like working with singles, but it's just a single ply, 1 bobbin, done. That's it. And you get a lot more yardage.
Now, is all single ply considered Lopi? I don't even know the answer.
No. Lopi is Icelandic yarn.
Oh, okay.
It's just Icelandic fiber. And it's very itchy. which is
Rustic.
how I,
Call it
yes, it's how I got involved with Eight Hands Farm, because they couldn't sell any of their yarn because it was so itchy. So we started plying it with some of my yarn, giving a little bit of color, and people got a little more interested in it. But it's, Lopi or Icelandic is ridiculously warm. It repels water. I mean, it's better than a coat. So, but something like this also, it's also incredibly warm. And they do
I
have blue
think the
faces.
beauty of being a spinner, which we've probably talked about with Heidi, maybe not, but the beauty of being a spinner or anybody who delves into experimenting with fibers, it just gives you a better appreciation of all the different types of fibers out there. And as I always say, every fiber does have a purpose. It doesn't mean that every fiber is going to necessarily feel great next to your skin, depending on your own level of sensitivity. But at the
Right.
same time, you can wear layers. There is outerwear, or there are fibers that do better if they're going to be worn more or worked more, like
Right.
on your hands or on your feet. So
Exactly.
just trying to find the appreciation. And that's why when you say itchy, I try to use the word
I know.
rustic a bit more,
Rustic.
because it is, because
I've
it
had, yeah, I've
and
had,
I'm not going, but I feel like, especially in working with the community that I tend to have, when I want to deviate, from the normal blend, it's going to feel different, right? And, you know,
yep.
in a sense, maybe rustic, organic. I just never wanted to have a negative connotation, and
Yeah.
that's no disrespect to you using that word,
Yeah.
because
I'm,
also, too, as you well know, what's itchy for one person
oh,
is not
totally.
going to be itchy for somebody else.
Totally. I've had discussions with people who have come into my booth and said, well, I'm allergic to wool. And I've actually discussed this with wool scientists, with PhDs that claim there is no such thing as an allergy to wool. So, people are going to just have different, I'm allergic. Well, maybe you just don't like the way it feels, but oh no, I
Well,
break out
that's
in this and it.
interesting.
So,
Although, there are people that are allergic to lanolin, and
yeah.
there could certainly be remnants. And I'm only thinking of one particular friend, because I do agree with you, because at the same time, llama and alpaca is scientifically deemed hypoallergenic. Yet I'll have people that will say to me, well, I'm allergic to alpaca. Okay. Well, let's
Yeah,
think about that. You could be allergic to the dye that was used. You could be
sure.
allergic to how it was washed. You
Hmm.
could just be irritated by whatever little prickle factor might be there. But I have heard of people that do knit with wool and their hands literally get red and itchy, and whether or not that's allergic,
Right.
who knows? But either
Yeah.
way, everybody has different levels of sensitivity, and that's okay, right? There's
Yeah.
some
I
people.
yeah, I think also if you don't experience the wool, then you're going to have like a fear of it. If you're raised wearing, just cotton and fleece and haven't worn it, I think the body needs to get used to it. I think skin will adapt. I mean, skin is an organ. It could adapt, just like when they give a baby a tiny little speck of peanut butter to acclimatize their body to whatever it is, and then they get used to it, and then they can eat it. So a little wool maybe on a baby, which also, of course, I always tell people they should put wool blankets on babies because they're flame retardant. Like, oh, as opposed to cotton, which could just go up in flames, which is pretty scary. It's got so many amazing properties. So yeah, I love wool. And I love the animals too. I mean, the babies, oh my goodness.
Well, I'm always so blessed that you come and try to pay us a visit every year, which of
Oh
course
yeah.
we appreciate. So even though you can't have animals where you are always welcome to come and visit mine, of course.
Yeah, I saw one of the people that did it the Zoom the other night. She said she's going to be learning how to do beekeeping, which is
Yes,
so great.
actually, she just posted. Actually, I will say,
Yes.
so that was Heidi. So
And
anybody, if you've not already followed Dirty Girl Yards, you actually have to go check out her reel that she posted.
oh
She's
yeah,
beyond excited in her beekeeping outfit. So excited about, I guess, something that was gifted to her for the holidays.
it's
And
amazing. I used to work with bees a lot when I was a master gardener, and you can keep bees in Queens, New York. You can keep bees in Suffolk. You cannot keep bees in Nassau County.
Weird.
It is so weird. That's why I think I have to leave. Yeah. I mean, we would have no planet without bees. So the more beekeepers, the better.
Well, I think it's exciting. I mean, for all the different ventures that everybody gets into. So talk to me about those really cool stripy colors in that picture behind you and
Oh, that?
some of your different well, to me, I feel like, and I know it's not predominantly or all of your yarns are not like that, but that is, I feel like that's always what I was drawn to
Yeah.
when I would see your yarns. And I think my biggest question is, only because I know the mechanics of spinning, I get that you've got two bobbins that you're then twisting and plying together. But even within those, you have so many different colors. It's
Hmm.
not like you are creating a barber pole, which is just brown and green
Right.
twisted together.
Yeah.
So as you're spinning, are you kind of creating your own
No,
self striping? Are you changing colors like
no,
as you start throw? So
no.
how do you get that?
So it's when I paint on the yarn. It's when I paint it on. And
Oh,
I paint it.
so you're
I
not
brought,
dyeing beforehand.
oh, I am. I paint the roving. I paint the roving with paintbrushes
Oh,
very specifically. I don't dip anything. I don't,
now do you dye all of your yarns that way?
yes.
Oh, okay. So that's a whole nother box that we just opened because
Yeah.
and not to say, but you didn't specify that. So
Yeah.
really
Sorry, I forgot.
no, that's okay. That's why we're doing this because for most people, even myself, even though I know people paint yarns, we automatically assume the minute somebody says, "Oh, I dye yarns," when you said
Right.
I did roving, honestly, in my head, I'm like, "Wow, how does she keep it all together?" Okay, I'm just thinking you're dipping the roving and dyeing it in a pot
N-
like that. So, talk to
No,
us about
I
how
have,
your dye process works and the fact that you paint it.
right. So what I do is I, when I soak my fiber to dye, I soak what should be about one skein, what's going to fit on my giant bobbin when I'm done. And that's pretty much about six ounces of fiber. I lay it out on my table down in the basement. I have hundreds of jars that I'm constantly playing with and mixing and mixing and mixing. And I dip into the dye and I paint it onto the roving. And I stay within like its lane, like, and then so say right here, it's green. And then I'm going to move here and it's going to be a different color. And I move here and it's going to be a different color. And then I mean, I can show you, I can go grab one that I just dyed. Hold on,
Yeah,
I'll get it.
please
I'll get it.
do. Absolutely. I'm sure nobody is going to mind that you are getting up and leaving us to go get that because I would love to see it. I honestly have to say myself, everybody, I know that people paint and dye that way, but I've never seen it. I've never been around it.
Okay. So you can see that I have blue, or I'll pull it back, blue here, and then it moves to this color, which is a
Okay, but
different
here's a
blue.
really, really dumb question. So that's the roving, so everyone
This
can
is
see
the roving.
roving is round. So are you like rolling it as you're painting it? Does it really matter if the color goes all the way throughout?
Oh, yes. And, something like blue-faced Leicester will just suck up the dye instantly, whereas merino, you have to pull it apart and get in there. Otherwise, it's white. It's very hard to get the color in there. So in order to get it really super saturated and get something like this, which is super, super saturated, I'm in there for a really long time. Just placing the color sometime and dyeing and then over dyeing and then over dyeing and then it takes a while. It's labor intensive.
Now, is this just how you learned, or you knew the difference between like, you know, I don't, can you even dip roving and dye it that way?
You can, but you're not going to be able to do this.
Well,
You're
no,
going to
I
get,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
I know you're not gonna be able to
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
So
you can totally dip it.
is
Absolutely,
this
if you
how
want to.
you learned, or this is what you gravitated toward?
This is what me and I learned a little bit from Laura, who taught me to spin. We would just play with colors, and she would pour them or use spoons. And, over time, I developed my approach, and it works. It works. So I'm not going to veer from it. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. And I just I like the fact I just enjoy so much when I'm spinning it to see what's happening. And you just can't get that unless you do it this way. There's just no way.
I
So it's a
honestly
very long process.
had no idea. And I'm like sitting here in my own head, of course, saying, this is why we do this. And so I'm gonna shift the gears to our project, but this is exactly also why I wanted to do this. And so right now what's going on in my head, because I have no problem admitting to everybody, I literally have been sitting on this yarn for a year and a half.
Is that
Yeah. And I remember, I know why we did it, when we did it. And
right? It was about a cruise, right? Something
yep.
about a cruise.
And that wasn't this past summer. That was the summer prior.
Wow.
But, part of me, of course, wants to feel bad and criticize myself for having it, sitting on it. Sometimes for me, when stuff is given to me, I've got to break it up. I've got to put it in kits. You and I kind of were like in this whole conversation of like, we don't even know what to do. I don't know how to pay you. Blah, blah, it was this whole thing. And, oftentimes I am so guilty of not stopping to do the things I need to do because I'm constantly running. And then next thing you know, it just is there. I mean, I carried these balls around with me everywhere. I would take them to shows. I would have intentions of trying to skein them up, because you gave me bigger batches that I wanted to break up into smaller batches. And either way, but rather
I
than
remember.
beating myself up, it goes back full circle to everything that we've continued to talk about of like, maybe this is why I'm still meant to have it. For you to be part of this conversation, for myself included, to have a better understanding and a better respect, truly, for the yarn that you created for me. Because I did not have that conversation with you. And I really genuinely mean that. And I think,
Right.
even as I said to you earlier, for somebody to look at it and maybe seemingly think, oh, it's just this. Like, it looks simple.
Mm,
It's not fun, funky, flying fibers everywhere. It looks like it's hand spun, but it looks like a regular 2-ply yarn. And now all of a sudden, there's a whole new perspective
yeah.
for it. And I
Right.
like, I'm like, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's interesting because depending on where I am, like I do only like fairs a year, but certain fairs people really know, and other fairs they know nothing. And, but honestly, the thing about once the yarn is done, I'm done.
right.
I'm not attached. Once it leaves my house, like if you said to me, you sold it, you didn't sell, I don't care. I'm also like a horrible business person. That's not the where I'm coming from at all. I have, I am, I have, like Allie can even tell you, she's like, Sue, you need to make samples. She told me this for like 5 years. Sue, you need to make samples. Sue, you need to make samples. I'm doing it now.
But here's the thing. It I mean, and it's okay if this is the truth. The truth is, you don't need this to survive, right?
No, 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 you could,
So,
there's no way I could survive on this. There's no way.
but I
No.
mean, well, I mean, but and again, and that's wonderful that you do not need this to sustain yourself.
Mhm.
or your lifestyle. It just adds to it. I guess that's my
Yes,
point. So don't
yes,
don't discredit yourself for not being a great business person. You just have a different motivation. You're not motivated to have to feed a farm, pay bills, and
right,
run it
right.
as that kind of a business. And God bless you for that,
Yeah,
truly.
well, I technically I'm retired, which is so funny. I retired in 2020 or something like that, and now I work 7 days a week. But I love it. So, that's what I want people to get is that, the best is yet to come. You just don't know it. But for me, when I'm working with people, whether it's you or another vendor or another purveyor, I forget, that they should send me money. I just don't think about it. I don't want to think about it. That's a choice I'm making. I just want to do what I'm doing and have a great time. Because I think that's the only way I could put out a great product. If I'm thinking about like money or the bottom line, I think it would tinge it somehow.
No,
So yeah,
absolutely. Well, I remember the details. I mean, of course, again, I'm always blessed to have you come and visit. Usually once a year, you always
right,
bring friends. You're always introducing somebody new to the
yep.
farm. And yeah, this was 2 summers ago. I was being creative in that we had this knitting cruise that was happening. And that was my inspiration of just wanting to come up with some kind of Long Island based things to have that would be different. And somehow or other, it was just serendipitous. You were either coming at the time or we were talking, or I don't know. I just got the idea. And I had roving at the time. So I had my own Cotswold, whether it's a combination of Mumford and Clover, and other Cotswolds that I shear, but it was all fibers that had been shorn by me, all raised here on Long Island. And because also the part that I forgot, because I'm doing so much right now with the raw Cotswold fleece, I was thinking almost in my head that I gave you raw fleeces until you were like, no, 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 I don't do that. So it also must have just been that I happened to have volume of Cotswold roving at the time that I gave you. And then was just
Cotswold.
like,
I
here,
would have, if you had asked me, I would have said llama. It was Cotswold.
it was Cotswolds.
Gone. It's gone. It's gone.
Yep.
Gone.
So again, and that's where kind of a little bit more of like the rustic comes in, because we're not dealing with llama, we're not dealing with merino, we are dealing with
Right.
Cotswolds, which is in the long wool breed category. So it is a little bit more of a rustic type yarn. But the beauty, again, always of hand spinning is that, as I always say, you have an opportunity to trap more air into it, so you can capture and create a bit more loftiness or softness to it than it would otherwise be in a commercial spun yarn. So that was the precedence behind it, if you will. And and then I remember, you ended up driving back out here and then delivered, a bunch of yarn to me because I just said, do what you want to do. And so some of it you left as 100% Cotswolds, and then some of it you had decided to blend some Blueface Leicester into it. So for anybody who
Oh,
doesn't know, Blueface Leicester is actually a really beautiful,
beautiful.
beautiful fine fleeced sheep. You have regular border Leicesters, and then you have Blueface Leicesters, gorgeous to look at too. I actually tried one time to get my hands on one, to have on the farm. They're a dream to shear, and they do have a gorgeous fleece. And so Sue's thought was she just wanted to experiment because obviously you have a lot of Blueface Leicester in your life. And
Hmm.
so she had wanted to blend a little bit of the Blueface Leicester with the Cotswold just to see if it changed it in any way. So that was the story behind it. And as Sue had said, she just really kind of handed it to me. And I'm like, well, what do we do? And she's like, I don't know what we do. And she's like, just here, and we'll figure it out. And then of course, between the two of us, lo and behold, here we are this much later. So um these
It's
are
going to
the
be new to me too. Oh, look at
it's like a surprise all over again,
that's
right?
right. That's right. They look so
Now,
small.
well, because again, the value, as I think I said to you when we were talking, the value that I feel that goes into these yarns and what they should be at, and for what I market them as. I don't sell the larger, bigger, huger skeins. I like them in smaller kits,
Okay.
for people to just be able to have a little taste of it, and and again, price it accordingly in that sense for the work that goes into it. And I also didn't have a lot of it, so I was afraid, to just have this whole big skein, and as opposed to being able to just have these, kind of little tidbits, if you will, for people to be able to get involved with it,
Hmm.
is I
Sure.
think the best way to explain it. So in a sense, what there are is there's two different blends, and honestly, I will tell you, I had a very hard time because at one point in time, of course, I started to like disassemble things and labels got mixed up, and so it really is almost impossible to tell the difference. I mean, I can slightly tell the difference looking at them together, where the Blueface Leicester was blended in versus the pure Cotswold, but it's it's still interesting to kind of have them, side by side. And actually, I have to look at the tags first, to kind of see. There's a little bit more of like a vividness in the color, if you will, what was Cotswold and Blueface Leicester blended versus the Cotswold on its own. And I don't know if that makes, sense in any way.
I think it
As
was because it
far
was the cruise. You said ocean themed, so I went
Oh
with a
yeah,
lot of
no,
blues and
color wise,
greens.
absolutely. But I
Yeah.
mean, in terms of the way the dyes
Yep.
picked up,
Hmm.
and overall, like I said, there's a slight, ever so different. But essentially, there's two different blends that are in kind of this really beautiful blue green colorway. And then there are two different blends that are really just more of kind of like blues. So more little bits of whites, blues, kind of like if you were looking at, just a gorgeous, Caribbean waterway, the different highlights of the blues that you would see in there. So that's what we kind of ended up with. And again, it's a pleasant accident, that I've had it in my hands, for this long. And I'm happy, to be able to have the opportunity to have you tell the story, for people to kind of have a little bit of a better, understanding behind it in terms of what goes into this. And like I
Yeah.
said, again, myself included, because I really would have had no idea. So even, I guess I would want to ask you, even in terms of the skeins that are really predominantly just more blues, are you diluting just one blue, or do you have various shades of blues that you're painting?
Many, many, many blues. Many blue. Like I say, I'm not. That's a good idea to do that. One of these days I will, but I have such a hard time slowing myself down or just restraining myself. So there'll be a lot in there. And I like the idea of being more subtle. It's not there yet.
But that doesn't matter. I mean, again, and you might, like you said, you might never get there like
I might
that.
never get there.
I mean, and that's okay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Again, you shouldn't force yourself to do something that, again, you're not feeling, in a sense, called to do. So these are the yarns that before we started recording, I had to run off
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
I forgot to turn them on. So either way, yes, they are there. I just really wanted people to have an opportunity to, hear the story and get all of that, before it was a matter of, being sidetracked by, trying to look at things, necessarily. What I wanted to be able to kind of take an opportunity to do, also maybe just for a perspective for anybody that might be interested, is to just kind of show you the yarns matched up with some of mine in terms of getting a point of reference of the gauge and what it goes with. I mean, I think probably most similarly, the yarns that Sue spun for me, as she already told us, she likes to spin thick. She likes a chunkier yarn, and to be able to get more of the vibrant colors that way. So they certainly work extremely well with my bulkies. So for instance, this is the one that's predominantly the shades of blues with ever so slightly a little bit of a tinge of green, or like a blue green, and then next to white picket fence. At the same time, also, matching it up with celestial sky is
Ooh,
also
pretty.
a really cool match, because the aquas, if you will, kind of the more teal of the yarn that you created for me really pulls out the speckles in
Mm,
the
see that?
celestial sky. And then of course you can get crazy and have all three of them together. So, again, what I see as always is just for people to be able to dabble in just a little bit of what you've created, because again, it's exponentially the all of it behind it, the shearing, my roving, which is not at wholesale, the work that you already just talked about that you put into it, and just wanting everybody to have a little bit of a sampling. It can very easily be something that can be striped into a hat or into a cowl, so there's just a little bit of the story of that in there. Likewise, the blue green, equally as well, goes with the white picket fence. I mean, I think me personally, I would not necessarily do it with the celestial sky. I feel like it kind of pulls away from the beautiful greens that are in it. But again, that's the beautiful thing, is everybody can kind of do their own thing. Also, then I thought it was super cool to pull in Heidi. So this is actually one of the yarns that I had in stock, not with
Oh,
my
that's pretty.
fibers, but what Heidi had done for me and some of her yarns that I have. So, even kind of combining the whimsical nature of the hand spun yarns that Heidi creates, along with the really cool yarns that you create. So I
I
just
just
thought,
want to show you one of my customers do amazing things. So one of my customers uses my yarn for just the yoke of a
okay.
sweater, which is really kind of fun. I never would have thought to do that. That's another thing about me, is that I don't know what to do with my own yarn. That's why I have friends like Allie. She's like, do this, do that, make a sweater. Once I'm done with it, it's like part of my brain just turns off. So I don't know what to say to people. Like, make whatever you want, make a hat, make a cowl, but people are very creative, and they do put a stripe in to a simple sweater, and it makes all the difference, or the yoke. So yeah, I would never know to do that, which is really kind of pathetic, since I've been knitting for 62 years. You would think
Now,
I
I was
would
gonna say,
know.
before I show some colorways with the worsted weight, so now that you've gone down the spinning rabbit hole, do you find that you don't knit as much anymore?
Oh no, I always knit. I
Oh,
I,
okay.
I divide up my I am always knitting. I just knitted an alpaca Icelandic sweater for a friend's daughter-in-law, welcoming her to the family. I love to knit. I just love to knit. So I knit, I weave, I dye, I spin, and I just compartmentalize my day. Like if I'm knitting, I'll knit at night when I'm watching TV or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, I still knit. Oh
Well, I
yes.
want to make sure we get into the
But
weaving also.
but
But
not with my own yarn. I almost never knit with my own yarn because I'm done. I'm finished. You know what I mean? It's just like, ugh, I want someone else's yarn.
Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense in a way. To some degree, you're putting so much labor of love into the process of creating your own yarn. And look, maybe you say you're a horrible business person, but at the same time, if you always knit with your yarn, you'd really get nowhere, so
Right,
you can sell that yarn so then you
right.
can buy other yarn.
And I love so many other people's yarns. I mean, I'm a consumer. I'm a huge consumer. So I'm buying all kinds of fiber all the time because it makes me happy. So yeah, I'm always excited to use someone else's.
Well, I paired this up also. Again,
Pretty.
it'll still also work with the worsted weight, with my worsted weight as well, because a little bit of your yarn, of course, which is the absolute beauty of hand spun, you're going to have some areas that are a little thicker. You're going to have some areas that are a little thinner,
Hmm.
and even
Hmm.
those areas that appear a little thicker, again, there's air in there, so it's going to compress, to also be able to work with something else. So this is actually the blue green version of your yarn that you created in the middle. And then I have it next to sage denim and then also flaxen denim, just again to show just kind of how it, pulls out different colors in different ways, just to be able to give people an idea. And at the same time, and this is the plain blue. So even at the same time, it'll work with those. And then this is the regular denim. Actually, I love these
Pretty.
together. I know.
That's pretty.
So I see, and here's the funny thing. I love doing color work, but everybody knows that
Ah,
I don't knit a lot at all. And when I do knit, doing color work, it just starts to get complicated in my life because I got to keep things simple. So I love putting colors together, yet at the same time, everyone's definition is so different about what colors they would put together. And that's
mm,
what I find is the beauty of it. And also the reason why I hate kits, which everybody knows that. So, for me, I'm like, this is gorgeous. I love this. Yet at the same time, I love the creativity of how many of people in my community would put yarns together that I would never think to put together. So I think that's kind of what makes it fun in that way. I also will say, and this is just a small, I don't even know if this is on the site, but I actually have this like, well, I had two, but now I only have
that's
one.
pretty.
I had this vintage, I call it whenever I pull something out of the vault. So this is like a vintage life yarn. It's a bulky in my own fibers with a little bit of topaz bamboo blended
Oh,
in.
it's
I
gorgeous.
have no idea if it's on the site, but I actually really like it with your yarns
Oh,
as
that's beautiful.
well, because everybody knows I love brown and I'm a
I
big
love brown. That was my favorite color when I was growing up. As the 12-year-old, what's your favorite color? Brown.
I love it.
It's the color of chocolate, right?
There you go. That's maybe my new marketing pitch to convince everybody.
Yes.
It's chocolate, folks. Well, again, I just wanted to give people some color inspiration. I wanted to give people some ideas in case they see your yarn and are thinking, they're just not sure, what to do with it. Now, before I ask you some questions about your weaving, here's the one thing that I do want to share with everybody because I know you won't do it on your own behalf. So prior to tonight, I reached out to Sue and I said, okay, look, obviously I've got the yarns, I've priced them. You've never asked me anything for them. What are we doing? How about we split this? How about whatever people purchase, we split it. But I also know Sue. And I said, or if you don't want that, I said, how about we donate? So how about we donate half of it to a charity or to something of your choice? Because I wouldn't feel okay, with just assuming or hanging on to all of it for all the work that she did. So then why don't you tell them what your answer was?
Oh, definitely donate. Donate to animals, donate. I never I don't it's gone. It's so gone out of my head already. So I don't I want it, yeah, if it could help your animals, because I know when you have to go to Cornell on those road trips to the veterinarian, I know what that is.
And
So
that's
put
what
it
Sue
in,
said. She asked if I had a specific fund, specifically for veterinary expenses, for my animals. And so, in all honesty, while we don't have a separate fund, as I tell everybody, I'm not here driving a Lamborghini. I'm not wearing, well, maybe sometimes I have expensive clothes, but trust me, I mean, there's not many of them. And so, either way, I did say, all of my money goes back to the animals. And I do earmark things, of course. And as anybody who knows and knows me, I will never spare an expense. You'll never hear me say, "Oh, I don't have that to be able to do for an animal." So I wanted to use the platform to share Sue's generosity in that, no matter
Listen,
how long ago
if
it
it was
was.
up to me, everything would go for the animals. And the people would have to fend for themselves because the animal, I mean, if anyone hasn't been to the farm or seen those babies, I mean, they're magical.
Well, so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, Sue has essentially
Yeah, yeah,
donated,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
even though it was long ago. She has donated everything that she has done, and I'm thankful for that. But I think that really speaks to her character as well. So just know, with any purchase that you guys make, of course, as with any purchase you guys make, whatever I have goes back to making sure we continue to be able to share our animals and share our love of fiber and share our love of community like we've done over these past 12 days. So I wanted to make sure people knew that. So because people want to know, Allie wants to know. So, and I was
Ali
not
doesn't
even,
know.
I don't, well, I think it was maybe just more of like a, getting the
Rhetorical
question out
question.
there. So I don't think that I even realized, is weaving new for you?
Yes, yes, yes.
So
So
when did you go down this rabbit
a
hole?
local friend wanted to learn how to weave. And I said, well, I do know a gal in town that weaves. I could connect you to. And this was the summer before COVID. So I guess it was like August 2019. Said I'll have, we'll meet. I brought her over to my friend's house and she's explaining and what it'd be like. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, well, why don't I do it too? So I took the class with her. And now I have many looms in my house. Oh, so the cool thing is, first of all, I always wanted to weave. I always thought it was so hard that there was no way my brain would learn how to do it. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. So I learned how to weave, got some looms, and I thought, I want to weave with my hand spun. That would be a cool goal. So what I finally, I make a lot of the blue-faced Leicester, and I've been weaving with it, and it's just, I think, the most fun. And also you can use all of your scrappy stash yarn for weaving. It goes much further than yarn goes for knitting. I mean, you can make an entire scarf with very little yarn, actually, as opposed to knitting. So I really love weaving now. And I did tell my friend Allie that she should, she's an expert knitter, expert. And I said, I think you should weave. And she's like, no, 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 not going to do it, not going to do it. I said, you're going to do it. Well, she's weaving like a crazy person. So yes, it's just so great. So yeah, I have
So are you weaving rugs, or you're doing scarves, or?
scarves, shawls. I made my first ruana, which is like a long thing. I had to buy an extra wide loom for that. Um, and I also love the tools, the loom itself. We didn't really talk about the loom and the spinning wheel. The actual machine is so amazing. I mean, they're thousands of years old. This is how all fabric was made, whether you're knitting or spin. You have to spin first to get the fiber so that you can either knit with it or weave with it. And it's fascinating. I mean, whoever invented these things, amazing. And you don't need electricity. You could just sit there and do it by your window if you're desperate and create fabric. It's amazing. So yeah, I love it, love it, love it, love it. And I've been using like yarn that I bought that I didn't end up using for other things. Couldn't recommend it more for anyone who has even the slightest interest. Dive right in. In fact, next week, just for me, I'm taking an online Navajo weaving class, which that is another obsession of mine, everything Navajo. So I had to get a Navajo loom, which I got, and I'll be diving into that. That's just my own personal for fun, because I don't think I'm going to be using my own yarn. I think churro is the kind of wool that you use for that.
No.
Maybe some Icelandic. So yeah, weaving is there's rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and they're great. They're all great. And you meet the most amazing people.
You do, you do. Now, where can people find you? So, most importantly, you've got all this beautiful yarn, you've got these beautiful works. We get that you don't necessarily need to sustain yourself off of it, but if
Yeah.
we don't make some room in your house,
Yeah.
we might lose you amongst
Yeah.
all of it. So,
The truth is I make about 350 skeins a year, which is, compared to most dyers, a drop in the bucket. It's nothing. It's really nothing. But since it's all one of a kind and handmade, I'm not dyeing 100 skeins at a time. That's it. So it's a limited amount. So I have 2 stores at the moment. I used to have 3, several stores that I used to sell to went out of business. Woolen in Brooklyn carries my yarn. 8 Hands Farm in Cutchogue, New York carries my yarn. I do Halleckville Fair. I do the Kings County Fiber Festival. I did Indie Untangled this year. And I do the Setauket Craft Fair. And I have a website, sandpiperyarns.com. But the truth is, and I do this for people all the time, the best way, if you really want my yarn, because I always have it in the house, but for me to get it on the website, it sends me over the cliff. FaceTime me. If you want to see yarn, FaceTime me. And I've done this many times, and I'll show you what I have if you're interested in certain colors or whatever, and we'll chat. And it's probably the easiest way, because there's not a lot on the website right now.
what's the easiest way for people to get a hold of you in order to then be able to make that connection?
I guess email me on my website is the email address, but it's basically sandpiperyarns@gmail.com. At Gmail, however that goes. Yeah.
And then would you like to share? I know that you were interested in extending a special to
Oh,
attend.
sure.
And
Sure.
again, so just to make it clear, Sue's not able to create that coupon code with her website. She's just not there yet. So the offer that she's offering you, you need to contact her directly. So feel free to share that.
Yes. So yes, I would be happy to take 15% off of anything you want to purchase. You can even look at the woven stuff if you're interested in that till the end of the month, I guess. Makes sense. I'm easy. And I love to talk to people. I love it. I love it. So if, sometimes I get customers from, California, Arizona, and, we get on the phone and the next thing you know, it's an hour later, because you connect in so many ways that you never expected. And I'm fine with that. That's great. You never know. So just feel free. Email me first. That's the
I was
easiest
going to say,
way.
and I know Erin's been nice enough to drop things in the chat. The information's there. Of course, if anybody forgets, you guys know you can always reach out to me, and I'd always be happy, to make sure that you get connected, with Sue as well.
Yes.
So that
And the thing also, it's just me. There's no assistant. I don't have anyone here. Literally, it's just me in my house all day, every day. So if you get it, you'll get in touch with me. It'll only be me.
Well,
Oh
and
my
that's
God.
not a bad thing. That's not a
Right.
bad thing at all.
No,
So
it's a fun thing. It's pretty great. It's pretty
absolutely.
great.
Well, I just want to say, Sue, I mean, I know unequivocally, speaking with you, I'm trying to think of the right words, because there is just a really beautiful spirit about you that I've always appreciated every time we've had a chance
Oh.
to visit on the farm, when you come see the animals, when we have a chance to talk. There is just a lovely peacefulness about you. And you are always, despite the difficulties as of recently and friends that I know you connect with and having difficulties with the things that are going on in the world, you are always just coming back to the animals, constantly coming back to trying to find the positives in things and staying as grounded as you can that way. I mean, I just never hear a negative word out of your mouth. And you're just a beautiful, beautiful person.
Oh,
And
you're
I
killing
know
me
that,
here.
and I know that people can hear that just in the way you talk and in the conversation. And I think again that's what's so amazing about doing these things, is just being able to get to know the person behind what they do. And I really thank you for sharing your time with us that way.
Pure pleasure, pure pleasure. And really, I wouldn't just do this for anyone. It's the fact that you are so devoted to those animals. That's the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing. I mean, when the baby, was it Lana? Baby Lana?
Which one? There was
The
Lana and
the
Carly.
one the one that was laying on the ground. We were all up all night on the
Oh, that was,
phone watching.
yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that was.
I mean, I've never felt so connected to, I was there. I was there with you. I was there with you and just praying my little tushy off for that little baby to come through because whew,
And she
that's
did.
where my heart,
You
yeah,
were,
and she
I,
did, and she
I
did.
think
But
you
that's
were,
where
I don't
my,
know if you were sick or if you were able to join us for New Year's Day when Paul and Cindy were on. They are the ones that have Lana. So,
oh,
yep. So
oh,
she is great. She's doing great. She's with Carly.
amazing, amazing.
So it is. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
again, for people that have jumped on board, mostly during COVID, but have continued to stay. I'm of course forever also, wanting to make sure that, people are getting to know the animals, have relationships with the animals, whether they stay with me or not. It's the fun thing to be able to follow them and keep everybody connected, because they are beings. They're my children. They have stories. They have personalities. And so albeit the fact that it was weird to me in the beginning, that's my great joy. And sometimes I'm good at it and sometimes I'm not good at it, right? So we can be critical of ourselves, but making sure that I can tell their stories as best as I can, and have people feel like they know who they are, and get to know them in all their weirdness, and in all their sweetness, and sometimes in all their evilness and spiciness, because we
Yes,
have those too.
but people are so disconnected from the animal world these days, and I think it's crucial to make that connection, to force people to pay attention to
Well,
animals.
thankfully for us, not in this world, but you're right, probably in a good portion of
Yes.
other parts of the
Oh,
world.
yeah. Yeah.
If people had more of those connections and found ways to have more joy, and that's all we can do. That's what we're all here for.
Hmm.
That's why we all do what we do, and that's why we're all connected with what we do, and that's why these people have been with me every night, to share in what we do. So I can't thank you enough. And it's been an absolute pleasure, because also, guys, Sue has been sick this week. And no matter how many times I texted her and said, it's okay, we can make adjustments, she's like, I'll prop myself up and I will smile
Blow my
and
nose.
I'm going to be fine. I might have to blow my nose a time or two. And, she was just an absolute joy and a trooper, as well, despite not feeling well, to do this tonight. And I know we didn't see a single ounce of that. So thank you very much.
Well, this helps. This
It does.
helps. This is medicine, people. This is medicine, right? It's
Well, make
therapy, it's
sure you
medicine.
do get some rest, though, because I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
it is
yeah.
draining.
I
And
have to get ready for Vogue Knitting Live. My stuff is going to be in the Murky Dyes booth in case
cool.
anyone's going to. So I will be seeing you there.
Excellent, excellent. Well,
I
as
will be
far as I'm
seeing you there.
concerned, as soon as we're done with the 12 days of Christmas, then yes, my life will
Yeah.
shift as well. And we've got to get on the stick, and we've got to get ready for, one of the bigger shows, that we all do each year. So you got to get spinning. So you need to make sure you're healthy. I got to get going on all the other things on my end. But Guys, don't forget, we still have the after party tomorrow night. So I will
Wow.
be sure to be reaching out to all of our guests. So yourself included, should you want to sit in and join in on the fun, you're absolutely
Absolutely.
welcome. For everybody else, remember 7 o'clock. Don't forget to tune in. Having a great time. We will be for sure. I'm hoping the stores, actually, the ship has sailed for me to make my sugared cranberries, but I'm definitely going to make a little goodie or two on my end if I can. Of course, I've got to clean this area because I'm going to be having guests. So, as either Oprah or Martha Stewart said, you need to invite guests over at least once a month because it forces you to clean various parts of your house. So, this porch is going to be
Point.
beautiful. So, guys, I can't thank you enough. It's not totally the end, but this is definitely the end of our conversations with all of our guests. I hope that you've enjoyed them. Thank you for the feedback. Don't hesitate to drop me a note here or there because I also do share them with all of the people that we've been in conversation with so that they have a chance to see all the great feedback that you guys have given us. So, with that, I'm anxious to see if anybody has snagged up your yarn. I'm going to go in and get myself warm.
Pick a
And
number.
Oh,
oh
pick a
my
number.
God, thank you. See, I'm so engrossed. Oh my gosh, they're like, we are unmuting and we are jumping in here. I'm so sorry, everybody. And look, we even gained. I've been watching the numbers. So we have 33 people still currently on. Oh my gosh, I feel so terrible. We have 33 people still currently on, Sue. So
Okay.
you need to pick a number from 1 to 33.
23.
All right, hold tight. Nobody move because you guys know what happens if you jump all over the place on me. So I need to go 1 and 2, and we're going to discount you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Scroll up. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Scroll up. 19, 20. What number did you say?
23.
21, 22, and 23. And that would be Mary. And I don't know Mary's last name. I'm not sure who that is. So, Mary, feel free to drop your info in the chat so that I know your last name. But at the same time, it is also your responsibility to get a hold of me so that we can make sure that you get your $20 credit with us to shop at Life. And you can thank all of these people here because had they not reminded me, I might have jumped off. So, congratulations, Mary. Thank you to everybody else for reminding me and keeping me honest. And with that, guys, I hope that you all have a wonderful evening. I'm excited for tomorrow night, excited to wrap all of this up. And this has been extremely interesting, as I knew it would. I've learned so much, and this is going to maybe sound wrong, but it was even more interesting than I thought because isn't it always the old adage, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I never know where my curiosity is going to take me. I mean, really, for the most part, I forget that everybody is here, and I learned so much from this conversation as well. And I definitely also have a greater appreciation, for the beautiful yarn that you did create. And I almost feel guilty that I kind of underestimated the work that went into it, also. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. My pleasure. I had such a good time. This was so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Sue,
Thank you, everybody.
everybody else, thank you as well. We will see you tomorrow night for the party.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.